Good morning. Good morning. Welcome to the Morning Report. Today, we break down President Donald Trump's ambitious legislative push that he's calling, of course, in only Trump fashion, one big beautiful bill, right? It's not just another tax package. This is a sweeping, all-in-one proposal combining tax cuts, spending reductions, and signature conservative policies. This is Trump's Obamacare. This is something that will have his name on it. This will be the Trump bill, right? Trump's America. And that's what's happening. However, it's making some waves inside and outside the Republican Party. So we're going to get to the details because the details are important. All right. President Trump's one big beautiful bill is a massive legislative package moving swiftly through Congress, kind of, sort of. Here recently, it combines the permanent extension of the tax cuts from 2017 and the Jobs Act brand new tax breaks, major cuts to government spending, border security, energy, social policy changes, and House Speaker Mike Johnson is aiming, God bless the man, to push this bill through before Memorial Day recess. That's Monday from now. Good luck. But the road's been pretty rocky, especially with disagreements among Republicans and Medicaid cuts where green energy rollbacks. People are having trouble with the Medicaid cutbacks, and I don't know why, but they are. So let's talk about what's actually in the bill. All right. Tax cuts. It makes the 2027 tax cuts permanent. It eliminates federal taxes on tips. Now, we've seen just yesterday, the Senate did, at 100-0, make federal tax on tips a real thing. And overtime pay, no federal tax on overtime pay. And Social Security benefits. It adds deductions for interest on loans for U.S.-made vehicles, reduces corporate tax from 21% down to around 18%. Not as far as a lot of hardcore conservatives and libertarians want it to be. It cuts top capital gains tax from 20% to 15%. Now, supporters argue that this plan avoids a $4 trillion tax hike and it will boost wages from $6,000 to $11,000. Press Secretary Karoline Leavitt says it's the largest tax cut in U.S. history. Spending cuts roughly are $1.5 to $1.7 trillion in cuts to offset the costs, Medicaid work requirements, and stricter eligibility checks. Now, before we go on, let's go back a little bit. Let's talk about the eliminating tax on tips. Now, I had never had a job that there were tips on it. My wife did. We met working at the Hut, and they always, I was a cook, and they always made more money than me because back in the day, I think the hourly for people who were waitresses and servers was something like $2.10 or $2.01, something like that an hour. Now this was 37 years ago, and the rest of us were making around $3.35, $3.65 an hour, and they always made more money than we did. But they had to declare their tips obviously as income, and that sort of brought them down to where we ended up after taxes, and that's really a shame. But now, with the Senate again yesterday passing a bill that they passed it 100-0. It was unanimous in the Senate. It was like the bill to have lunch. If someone said, "Hey, we're going to have lunch," let's vote on it. 100, everybody said, "Yes, let's go have lunch." It was that easy for them to do. And can you imagine how easy that is to do? How some of the rest of this should be. So it's no tax, no federal tax on tips, or overtime, and the bill and the big beautiful bill says, or overtime pay. Can you imagine getting all of your, for those of you who work per hour, getting all of your overtime pay? All of it. Your time and a half, or your double time if you work on the weekends or holidays, getting all of that. Yeah, kind of makes people smile. I just don't think people really know what's in it for them. I think all you hear from the mainstream media is the things that may be a little turbulent, right? All right. It also reduces corporate taxes from 21% to around 18%. Why is that important? Because first of all, corporations don't pay tax. What they do is they take that money that they're, quote, tax, and they pass that on as a business expense to the consumer. So technically, hopefully, now they don't have to. I mean, they can just keep their prices where they have them and soak us all for the extra 3%, or they could reduce their prices by 3% or delay their price increases. And that could be a benefit if you combine that with the tips, the overtime, and not paying taxes on Social Security, which seems crazy, right? Not paying taxes on your Social Security? How that helps seniors? Especially if indeed Social Security may be the entirety of the income that some people have. Imagine if you've gotten through life and now you're depending on Social Security, and it may be all you have, and what you don't have to do is pay taxes on it. Come on now. How is that not a good idea? How's that not a good idea? It also adds deductions for interest on loans for U.S.-made vehicles. So if you go and buy a Ford 150 pickup truck, and so you don't, so this deduction on it adds, so you can deduct from your Social Security the interest payments if you are buying a Ford 150 pickup truck or a Chevrolet, right? Now I don't know if it would include the Titans, and a lot of them are made here in the United States. I don't know, but we'll have to get that worked out. It also, and again, the reduction on corporate taxes, I think, is really important, and it cuts it cuts top capital gains taxes from 20 to 15%. Why is that important? Because there are a lot of people, especially people who are seniors, who their income comes from, their investments. They were told as 21-year-olds to make these investments, and now these investments are paying off, and are part of their retirement, and how they get handled by the government are in capital gains taxes. Now they're not getting handled as much, from 20% down to 15%. Now supporters argue this plan avoids, again, a $4 trillion tax hike. If this doesn't happen, $4 trillion in taxes will be due next time around. Wow. Okay. Let's talk about, we talked about spending cuts already, about $1.5 to $1.7 trillion in spending cuts. Of course, to offset the Medicaid or work requirement, cuts to offset the costs. There are Medicaid work requirements. So if you're on Medicaid, I believe it was something like you had to work 80 hours a month. 80 hours a month. That's 20 hours a week. Now, you could also include volunteering in that. So if you wanted to spend some time volunteering somewhere, you could. Now, this isn't going, now, according to the bill, it's not going to go into effect until 2029, which is part of the problems that some people have with it. Okay, they're going to finally start tightening down some of the food stamp stuff, and cuts to anti-poverty programs. It repeals green energy tax cuts from the Inflation Reduction Act. 11 House committees contributed cuts to hit savings targets other provisions. It boosts funding for the CBP and border enforcement. It resumes oil and gas drilling, expands pipelines, raises the debt ceiling while securing conservative wins of $2.5 billion for FAA traffic control upgrades. Pro-life writers are to block abortion providing funding. It's a lot. It's a lot. It may be too much. Maybe. All right. Not everybody's happy about it. Hardline conservatives like your boy Chip Roy and Ralph Norman nearly derailed the bill in committee. They want more aggressive Medicaid cuts. For example, scaling back Medicaid expansion. They want a total repeal of Biden's clean energy tax credits. These proposals cause concern among moderates and swing district Republicans. Speaker Johnson has since walked back some cuts to keep the coalition intact, because Mike's just trying to get the bill through. Trump has personally intervened, calling on the GOP to stop posturing and unite. Here's an interesting thing. Trump does, he understands, but he doesn't like it. He understands that what Republicans don't do that the left does is stick together no matter what. Even through all the craziness that was the Affordable Care Act, there was never a doubt in Democrat circles that it would pass. Never. Everything else was just details. There was, Barack Obama was never worried that the Affordable Care Act would not get signed, that it would not end up on his desk. He was never concerned about it, ever. Because what he knew was that there was not enough votes to stop it. And what he also knew is that when the day came to an end, when the rubber met the road, Democrats were going to vote for the Affordable Care Act. And what Trump doesn't, what frustrates him, he understands, but what frustrates him is there is not that same sort of unity, if you can call it unity, amongst Republicans. There's not. Now, certain news organizations and people and think tanks have said this is a really good idea. For instance, Fox News, the National Review, and the Wall Street Journal say that this is a pro-growth, pro-worker bill. The Heritage Foundation and Job Creators Network back the bill's tax cut and work requirements. Business groups like the Business Roundtable say it's a step towards energy independence and fiscal sanity. Now, Josh Hawley. Now, we've seen Josh Hawley on the internet just roasting people, and everybody's cheering because he's roasting people. And other populists warn that Medicaid cuts will hurt working class voters. Moody's downgraded the U.S. credit rating, citing fiscal risks. The Cato Institute and others argue that tariffs, we're back to tariffs because this is Cato's Institute thing, and others argue tariffs undercut tax gains. Because tariffs historically raise prices, so if you win, if you get your taxes cut but you're paying more for things, you understand what I'm saying. Now, I wonder about that last one, and we've said here on the program that the deal is, I think that these tariffs are being used in a way that they've really not ever been used before. And countries are coming to the table and getting deals. And we're getting deals. So maybe some of these tariffs that have, the 145% tariff on China isn't really going to happen. we'll see in a few days because there was a 90-day moratorium, a cooling off period, and we'll see what happens there. But this is part of the turbulence, folks. I keep talking about that because it's really, really important. It's part of the turbulence. There's, something had to change, and something big had to change. If, in my way of thinking, if you were worried about Trump running for, a second, or trying to run again and get the Constitution changed to run again for a third term, this is evidence that that's not what he's thinking. This is evidence that that's not what he was ever thinking. Because now you got to get it all done right now. So the 2025 bill expands on the 2017 TCJA by adding tax-free treatment for tips and overtime, raising the child tax credit from $2,000 to $2,500, restoring 100% expensing for business investments. 100% in business investments. Wow. The differences are the TCJA was a tax-only bill, and this is a tax and spending hybrid. 2027 had more GOP unity. Today's razor-thin majority gives every faction leverage. SALT cap remains a battleground. Trump and conservatives want to keep it, but coastal Republicans are pushing back. Again, more of the pushback. And this is something that I've said for a while, since we were doing the Willie Lawson show on Blog Talk Radio. I don't know, maybe one or two of you, maybe one of you out there remembers when we used to do that. We started that program back in 2008. It was just audio, and it was just on the internet. Blog Talk Radio. Kevin Jackson started there. Some others too. So anyway, people like David Zublik. I remember David Zublik. David's fantastic. Political Pistachio. Just some really great friends. Anyway, I'm just sort of name dropping here. That I learned that Republicans and conservatives are not the same thing. And it's funny. I saw a post on Facebook because I'm still old and I still do Facebook. And this person said, "I'm finally starting to understand that maybe MAGA and the Republican Party aren't the same movements." I did comment. I said, duh. And so we're not really seeing that same sort of unity that we talked about a minute ago. So the GOP's a narrow House majority, which is 220 to 213, which is a 7-person swing, makes this vote crucial. Centrists fear backlash from Medicaid and green energy cuts. They fear a backlash because what they don't want is that they don't want to lose the 2024. The 2026 elections. Trump won in 2024, promising to protect entitlements. Breaking that could alienate key voters. They're worried about re-election. A successful bill could energize Republicans ahead of 2026. So if we, this is these people are afraid. They're afraid. They're afraid because doing the right thing may get some of them unelected. Is that the word? Unelected? Unelected. Or what they could do is they could start selling it to their constituency in a way that makes sense. In a way that makes sense for you. Like I just told you about some of the things you're like, oh, that's a good idea. That's a heck of an idea. That makes things cheaper and better. I think we should do that. Instead of being wimps, they're not going to like it. Right. Maybe another tact would be in order for some of these people. All right. Again, a successful bill could energize Republicans ahead of 2026. A failure could fracture the party and risk control of Congress. So Speaker Johnson's leadership here is really being tested. Trump's influence remains very strong, but he'll have to balance demands from hardliners and moderates alike to get the bill over the finish line. I'd like to say also he's going to have to, and Congress is going to have to balance us. Us. Here's the number: 202-225. I'm gonna have to find that number, aren't I? I thought I had it memorized. I think it's 2020. I think it's 2525. I believe. They're gonna have to balance us. That number is 202-225-2777. Or you can also reach the Capitol switchboard at 202-224-3121 and ask to be connected to Speaker Johnson's office. What he needs to get, he needs to hear from us. He needs to hear from us saying, Speaker Johnson, we want this big, beautiful bill. We understand that it is devised by humans. And as you know, Speaker Johnson, when humans devise something, it's faulty because humans are faulty. But something big has to be done, and has to be done right now. Right now. That phone number again, there are two phone numbers: 202-225-2777, and you can call the Capitol switchboard at 202-224-3121 and ask to be connected to Speaker of the House Mike Johnson. And on top of that, you can call your own representative. Now, you can call, if you have a Democrat representative like I do, and my Democrat representative is Kathy Castor. I guess I could call her. I'll call her office. And what I know is, because I just told you, Democrats will stick together. All I'd be doing is showing her that, there's some displeasure. And I'm not going to vote for her, but she knows I'm not going to vote for her in 2026. But if you've got a Republican, especially one of those milquetoast, centrist, quote, Republicans, as your representative, and they're only there because Trump won, call them. Let them know. First of all, let them know this. Let them know that you're backing this, and if they back this, you will back them. You got it? Let them know, I'm backing this. This was one big, beautiful bill. And if you back this one big, beautiful bill, I'll back you at least one more term. That sort of eases their mind. And it also lets them know that they don't want to be on the wrong side of this when it comes to their voters. One more time before we leave. 202-225-2777. I'll write that there so you can see it. And the switchboard office is 202-224-3124. All right. Now we got that part done. Obviously, I didn't think about that before I started recording. All right. Now, this one big, beautiful bill is shaping up to be a defining moment in Trump's second term. Like I said, this is evidence for people that Trump was never, ever thinking about trying to change the Constitution or get around the Constitution to run a third term. It was never his intention. That was that was a bone he just threw out there to the media so they could chomp on that for a while. Which he is an expert, a genius. If Trump is nothing else, he's a troll master. 1,000% troll master. Now, what does this mean for the Republican Party at large? Well, first of all, will it pass? And if it passes, will it deliver? I believe it will. Whatever, we'll keep watching. Thank you again for coming to the Mona Report. The Mona Report is production of FightBackMedia.com, 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 and FightBackMediaTV.com. Until we see you again, go out there and learn something, love somebody, and for goodness sakes, y'all take care of yourself. We will see you when we see you. Bye-bye now.